Hi, my name is Jackie Bales. Today in my video presentation I'll be talking about endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification is basically the replacement of cartilage to bone through a 7-step process. Endo basically means inside and chondros is cartilage. The cartilage that starts off is referred to as a hyaline cartilage. This is the most common. It's closely packed, collagen fibers. They're tough but somewhat flexible. An example of hyaline cartilage would be articular cartilage, which covers opposing bone surfaces within many joints, such as the knee and the elbow. There are 7 steps to endochondral ossification. The first step shows that as the cartilage enlarges, you can see in the center that the chondrocytes expand inside their lacunae, which they are stored, and its students begin to calcify. Since they're deprived of the nutrients, they eventually die and disintegrate. They die because diffusion cannot happen through calcified cartilage because it blocks where they would diffuse. This all occurs in the shaft of the long bone, which is also referred to as the diaphysis. In step 2, you can see that the blood vessels now are growing around the edges of the cartilage and into the cells, the perichondrium. The perichondrium is basically where the blood vessels grow into. They surround the shaft of the bone cartilage. Once again, as you can see, the top of the bone is referred to as the epiphysis and the shaft is referred to as the diaphysis. Here you can see that the shaft of the cartilage then becomes ensheathed in the superficial layer of the bone. The perichondrium converts into osteoblasts. The osteoblasts are basically an immature bone cell. Moving on to step 3, now you can see that the bone vessels are starting to penetrate the cartilage and invade the central region. The central region is also referred to as the primary ossification center. Fibroblasts also migrate along with the blood vessels and eventually different into osteoblasts. This is where you can see in the inside of the bone where the spongy bone is located. This is also where you'll find the medullary cavity. The medullary cavity is basically where the osteoclasts appear, which break down bone and create a sort of cavity referred to as the medullary cavity. However, to be clear, while the diameter of the diaphysis is small, it is filled with spongy bone and there is no medullary cavity until step 4. On the outside covering of the diaphysis is the periosteum, which is a fibrous connective tissue membrane. It isolates the bone from surrounding tissue, provides a route for circulatory nerve support, and participates in bone growth and repair. Moving on to step 4, you can now see that the cavity of the inside of the bone is now greater, which is where the medullary cavity is housed. Here you can see that inside of the bone is the increase in length and an enlargement in the diameter, which is referred to as appositional growth. We'll talk about this more in step 5. Here you can see that the green coloring, which represents the spongy bone, is now overtaken by the medullary cavity. Moving on to step 5, now we'll be discussing the secondary ossification center, which occurs in the epiphysis of the bone. This is where the capillaries and osteoblasts, which move along with the blood vessels, migrate into the epiphysis, which creates this secondary ossification center. When comparing to other bones, you'll see that it varies from bone to bone and individual to individual as well. Here you will also see the metaphysis separates the epiphysis from the diaphysis. Moving on to step 6, looking at a closer look, you will see that the green, which represents the spongy bone, takes over most of the epiphysis. In addition, the articular cartilage is a thin cap of the original cartilage which remains exposed to the joint. This basically helps prevent from damage and prevents bone-to-bone contact within the joint as well. Here you'll see the epiphyseal cartilage, which basically separates the epiphysis from the diaphysis. The epiphyseal plate, which is also known as your growth plate, shows where your body grows. Once the epiphyseal cartilage is no longer there, it will turn to an epiphyseal line, which shows that the bone has reached its full length and growth. And finally for step 7, now you can see at the microscopic level the ossifying surface of an epiphyseal cartilage. This shows the relationship between the degenerating cartilage and advancing of osteoblasts, which basically means the replacement of cartilage with bone. On the far left you can see the white, which is the medullary cavity, and the pink, which is where the osteoblasts deposit the osteoid. Another term to know is an osteon, which is the basic functional unit of a compact bone. It contains osteocytes and lamellae, which are known as rings, canaliculi, which are used for communication, and a central canal, which is an artery or vein. In an osteon, the osteocytes are arranged in a concentric layer around a central canal. This canal contains one or more blood vessels which run parallel to the surface of the bone. Here's a diagram that also points out compact bone. Compact bone is mostly found on the outside of bones. It makes up about 80% of the human skeleton, is mostly used for protection. The remainder is known as spongy bone, which is softer and found deeper inside of. This now concludes my description of endochondral ossification. Thanks for listening!